Well,
Happy
that
4th of July, irony of ironies. You're watching the Dynasty Pulse with me and two Canadians. What is up, everybody? We are here to continue our pre SFB14 mock draft season. We are coming to you today. I'm going to be coming to you tomorrow. I'm going to be coming to you Monday. I'm going to be coming to you Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, getting ready for my live mock draft in San Francisco on Saturday, July 13th. But we have a ton of content. Hopefully we can talk some strategy and stuff like that. Maybe give some tips to the people in my league so that they can be sniping me all over the place and help you formulate your strategy. What are you going to do in your draft? We kind of dropped the ball with the introduction, but we do have Kyle Senra at Senra Says in the house. We don't have a We don't have the producer today. Shu Once is enjoying the 4th of July Independence Day festivities because he is on this side of the border. And so let's have Mike. Mike, hit that intro, buddy.
just did, buddy. Okay, let's go. Let's do our intro.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Dynasty Pulse, everybody. I am Biggs. He is Grindberg, and we have with us at Senra Says Kyle Senra. Go ahead and say hello, Kyle, and let everybody know what you're about, where they can find you, all that good stuff. Why are you here?
Well, hello. And why I'm here is to talk fantasy football, dynasty fantasy football, Scott Fishbowl, Canadian Football League, anything that involves football, basically. I could even talk the Euro Cup, Copa America a little bit. But I suppose it's not too ironic that you get two Canadians on the 4th of July, simply because, as you mentioned, with your producer, I imagine most people you'd want to have come on and be guests are probably celebrating, so you had to settle for me. So thanks everyone for not being here so I could join.
To be fair, and let me make perfectly clear, there is no settling. I reached out to you, so
I appreciate that.
We want you here.
We want you here, man. Yeah, well, Kyle, tell us about your work, where everybody can find your stuff, because I know you do good stuff. So tell everybody where we can find you.
Well, on a couple of different places. With Full Press coverage, I have a couple podcasts. Full Press Fantasy Pod, and that's fantasy football specific. Occasionally, we've done episodes on other sports, but it's almost every single one of the almost 350 episodes now are about fantasy football. Typically, Dynasty Fantasy Football does take a lot of time up to June, and now that we're in July, it's really going to dive into redraft season. In season, obviously, such a huge component is the weekly matchups, the weekly game of fantasy football. Full Press Packers Pod as well. That's not so much about fantasy football. That's simply a football view from a fan of the Green Bay Packers.
I thought it was going to be about Boxing Day, how to pack.
No. I'm awful at packing and doing that, so I would be the one to do the podcast on that. Maybe that would be the concept. I'd have to find people who are good at packing and then teach me. But no, Green Bay Packers. I'll stick to my wheelhouse. They're one of my favorite football teams. But then Going for Two is the other website. I'm part of the Going for Two live family. I do a couple live streams. There's live streams almost every day of the week, and we'll do some special episodes like this upcoming Sunday, which is July 7th. Yes, just to make sure you remember the date. 1 p.m. Eastern time, I'll be hosting a live look into Scott Fishbowl live drafts. So I'll be here in my home while in 4 different cities there'll be live drafts happening. We'll have people there checking in, including the Going for Two founder Jeff Lambert, who's organizing the Washington D.C. draft. So we'll have a few different drafts going on that we'll be checking in with, and then so I'll be doing my best. I've got my Scott Fishbowl draft starting on Monday, not a live draft, but I'll take it slow and relax the slow draft. So Going for Two also has a lot of Scott Fishbowl stuff. We have Scott Fishbowl ADP based on the now over 100 mock drafts that have been done through the Going for Two Discord, which is also free for people to join. People can gain a link to that on the goingfor2.com website. and that's again where also you can find Scott Fishbowl ADP as well as a bunch of other fantasy resources.
Yes, I am definitely in that Discord and everything. You got fans who are hanging out. Drop the mic.
Another member of the Going for Two Live family.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with Jeff's work and stuff. You do you play guitar? Is that are you a musician?
Yes, I am. So right now I'm in a band called the Yama Yama Sound. Typically working as an accompanying band for two of our band members who have their own albums, PA the Second and BAYO Bio, both members of the band, and they both have albums out, and so we as the band kind of bring their music to life and do it in live settings. So that's typically what I'm focusing on now. But yeah, I'm playing guitar.
And are you familiar with the town of Guelph?
I am familiar with it. I've never been to Guelph. I assume you're talking Guelph, Ontario.
Guelph, Ontario. And are you familiar with Vishkana?
Vishkana. I don't think so.
No. Okay. So there is a podcast called Creative Control. It's spelled with K's. Creative
Cool.
K, Control K.
That's cool with a K, by the way.
It's the host is Vish Khanna. He's pretty big in the Toronto music scene, and he has this podcast, Creative Control, that he records out of Guelph, Ontario, and he has incredible guests. Probably 5 or 6 with Steve Albini that I've been a fan of over the years. Just all kinds. It's indie rock related. So check out Creative Control. It's really, really good. Some of the best interviews, and he brings a very central on Guelph, I'm assuming, is in central Ontario. He brings a very Ontario sense of humor to it. It's it's pretty cool.
Anyway, awesome.
I do love Letterkenny, and Listwell, which is what Jared Kiesel based off that. I don't think that's too far from Guelph. So
give your balls a tug, tit fucker.
Yeah, exactly.
When this draft room is full, we need to pitter patter. Let's get at her.
Well, we got 2 spots left here, Biggs. I just sent an email out. So do you have one more link you could send it out to before we rip it?
I have.
I could join.
There. Oh yeah, you might as well get into the. Do you have the link?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, let's get that to you.
I'm on it.
Our guest of honor doesn't have the link. Jeez. This is an early show for us because we're used to operating in the evening, Kyle, and this isn't our forte. Obviously, in the morning when we're just getting up after a late night of potting. Actually, last night we had a couple shows as well that we did. So we've been burning the candle at both ends, trying to get as much Scott Fishbowl content as possible, getting ourselves ready for this huge tournament, and want to know your strategy. What pick are you in the Scott Fishbowl? What did you end up drawing?
So in the Legolas division, I'll be picking the 103 spot.
Okay, 103. And was your did you have like the pick of the litter when you entered that division, or is it already kind of full? Like how was your thought process on picking the 103?
I want to say it was about half full.
By the way, Kyle, check your Twitter DMs.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I'm drafted into 1 spot here in this mock.
All right. And guys, we are full now. So I'm going to get you back on your theory there, Kyle, but I'm going to start the draft here just to get it going. And why don't you get going, because you're first overall pick. So it's kind of a similar draft style than you're probably going to pick at the 103. But let's get this draft going, and then I'm going to give you the floor.
Actually, I might take the opposite pick. So part of my thinking is super flex, the importance of quarterbacks, and the top 3 seem like they're all incredible producers, both rushing and passing touchdowns. So I really want to just get one of those top 3 quarterbacks. So for this mock, now that I've got full control and I can make this happen, let's go a completely different round just to see what happens. I'm going to take Christian with all the rushing bonuses, like points per carry and all that. He's probably just such a huge difference maker at running back that I want to see what it's like to draft from this spot. Also with the 3rd round reversal, knowing I'm going to probably be forced into a quarterback in the 2nd round. So let's see what ends up.
Well, the point differential of 2013 scoring using this SFB14 scoring format, the point differential between Christian McCaffrey and the rest of the running backs is pretty stark.
And that even includes, like, let's say Raheem Mostert, who had like 20 touchdowns, but it was so
Yeah.
the volume wasn't necessarily there, and because McCaffrey had so much volume both on the ground through the air, that made up a huge difference even with the spike touchdowns. So yeah, let's just see what it's like to take the early running back, what that does for me at quarterback, and that'll maybe actually give me a better idea of what to expect, what to worry about going into the next round.
Yeah, and also you're skewing the ADPs in the data aggregation.
Well, I will say, and again, back to the going for two live ADP, or the going for two.com Scott Fishbowl ADP. McCaffrey is the second off the board. His ADP is 2.88. So essentially going between usually around the second or third pick. So it's not too strange to see him in this early turn. But yeah, if I can help mess things up for my own benefit, although I'll be drafting on MFL, so I won't be affected by this ADP.
Well, I have noticed that and this happens every year. Every single live draft that I've looked at the draft board does not line up with the aggregated ADPs that we're seeing from mock drafting, and which gives me hope, because my 107 guy that I've been hoping for, I cannot get him in a mock draft, but I would have gotten him in all of the draft boards that I've seen. So that's that gives me hope. But let's see if CeeDee Lamb lasts in this format.
So back to your theory there. Like, so your room was about half full. You saw the 103. What was the intriguing part about it? Is just getting that opportunity of getting one of those top tier quarterbacks? Is that what it is?
Essentially, yeah. I think the last this will be the third year in a row with the Scott Fishbowl that I've had. I think the 103, maybe the 102 in one of those years. I've managed to get Mahomes each of the past 2 seasons. It'd be intriguing and nice to go 3 in a row. If Mahomes fell to 103, I might just go that way. And if he doesn't, then that gives me Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. It's a lot of potential upside with the rushing touchdowns, especially. So I feel like I can't go wrong with any of those 3 picks. That was kind of the thinking there. So once I saw that, 103 was available. It was the highest pick left. I thought, okay, let's take this. Last year was funny. I got into the craft division pretty late, and there was only like 1 or 2 spots left, and one of them happened to be the 103. So it was funny that people were maybe pushing into the fact of the third round reversal. They wanted to be as late in the first round as possible. So
yeah, and when I look at that, if I am pushed towards the front end of the draft with that third round reversal, I think I like the 1 spot a little bit better, just because of the bang bang picks that you get. That doesn't scare you off that at the 3 you have a couple guys, you can't go bang bang. You have to kind of like wait a few 4 picks before you come back around.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a concern, but again, it's the cost of doing business. So I felt like the reward of getting one of those top 3 quarterbacks was worth that risk of being hurt in the third round.
All right. Well, part of my contingency, CeeDee Lamb is the first guy. Well, let me just say, Lamar Jackson is the first guy on my big board. CeeDee Lamb is second, and if one of them falls to 7, I will be so happy. But if what plays out just mirrors what just happened, I am going to definitely pivot to Anthony Richardson and take him a little bit above where he is on the board. And I know, Mike, you love Anthony Richardson, and drafting out of the 11th spot, it's not likely you're going to get him.
No.
What would you do if he fell to you?
I'd have the biggest boner in the world. It'd be very
big boner.
Yeah, it'd be very, very exciting to me to have that opportunity to get him. I haven't seen a mock where I played with a lot of people in it that it ended up falling to me. So he's going at the 107, 108 range. I've seen him go as high as the 105. I probably would have switched my spot, but I really like the division I'm in. I really want Anthony Richardson in my lineup, but I'm really excited about, see, somebody's willing to drop the mic. FF is willing to take him at the 105. And that's a really sound strategy. I mean, he's got the upside of being the quarterback 1 this year. And in this scoring where passing has been, passing, has gone down since last year. These mobile quarterbacks are going to be just the I think the jackpot here. And like Biggs said, I think Lamar Jackson, if he can get slide to you, Biggs, at the 10, I think you're sitting at 107, man. Lamb or Jackson, beautiful there. For me, at the 111, I'm hoping for this start. Honestly, if I can get Brees Hall and Amar Ra as my starting two, like I've got both those guys as potentially finishing at the number one at their position in 2024. I like Brees Hall and I like Amar Ra St. Brown, and I got them outside. They're my number one in redraft heading into this year at their position. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah, and Wildcats 192, it has my blueprint. I want CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott in round 1 and then round 2.
Great stack.
But I will take Anthony Richardson and Puka and not have the stack. Where are you at with the next pick, Kyle? What are you looking for?
Well, there's 4 quarterbacks I'd really like, and now I'm 3 picks away, so I'm gonna get one of them. Man, like Burrow was falling so far, but yeah, as soon as I realized
Jaden Daniels went. Wow. Okay.
Well, it's the upside with Jaden Daniels. I was hoping that he would be coming to me at the 3. On my 3
in the 3rd round.
Yeah. But
right,
I mean,
so,
people, and that's Coder.
I'm debating here. Which side do I have left?
Shout out FF Coder, part of the Undroppables team.
Yeah.
Just trying to debate, like, play the ADP game. There's the guy I think I want, but especially looking at the going for 2 ADP, not the on-site ADP, it looks like he might be able to fall like on average to the end of the 3rd. So even though I want him, do I risk letting him fall? I think I'll let the Packers homerism speak volumes.
Yeah. No, I like that call. I
Mike, I wanted to ask you real quick. Do we have a Packers contributor at Uncovered?
We don't.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Kyle, you good on work, or can you add to your workload?
Wow, on-site interview. Yeah, no, it's
just throwing it out there.
No, I'd consider it. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean,
but after the show, we can definitely talk about that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So Mike goes with his dude, Trey McBride. We have a triple tight end
build there. Yeah,
I'm totally on board with. If anybody watched our Wendy Early episode, and I am targeting a 3rd round tight end. Let me get to my thingy. Hang on while I play with my thingy. Where? There it is. Boom. Wait. Boom. Okay. So the start that I'm looking for is CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Evan Ingram. That's my ideal. I'm looking at Evan Ingram's target share and just loving the crap out of it.
Yeah, I love that. And like I was actually contemplating there because I knew I really like Dalton Kincaid now as well this year, which he's starting to emerge for me as a guy that has an outside shot for me finishing as a tight end 1. I'm almost getting him past McBride with Kelsey in that range too. I've moved Laporta down to my tight end 4 for different types of reasons, and I really like Kincaid. And then Evan Ingram, I love that upside there. They're bigs there. We talk about that nonstop with the targets and how things could open up for him in that Jacksonville Jaguar offense. I love that pick there. I love your build to start there. You got 3 really good upside players, and I'm excited to see what Kyle comes up with here. Are you looking probably with your turn here picks, maybe wide receiver, tight end type scenario, or are you looking at maybe stacking another position?
I would say wide receiver might be the position I want to fade, especially early, thinking that the depth could be there with the scoring settings, that the other 3 positions kind of carry enough importance.
Yeah,
I've got an interesting build in mind here, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
There are really 4 or 5 wide receivers that you want to target in the 1st and 2nd round. After that, there's probably a good 8 rounds where it makes a lot more sense to take tight ends and running backs. I carried that into that type of strategy last season into the playoffs. I didn't take my first wide receiver until I want to say round 9 or 10, and that was Treylon Burks. And so I went Treylon, Mike Evans, and Nico Collins in like the 9th, 10th, and 11th round, and made it to the 3rd round of the playoffs. So, or second round. Well, anyway, made it to the playoffs. So I've completely faded wide receivers, and it seemed to work out. There is another. We just had like a huge run on tight ends, 6 tight
and
ends
that's
in like 10
why
picks.
I was considering tight end, but I think I'm going to start with a 2 QB 2 RB build, because there's a guy with incredible upside here that I'm going to grab right now in Devon Achane. And Purdy was the guy I was considering ahead of Jordan Love, but again, I thought I could play the ADP and he'd fall. Sure enough, no one took another quarterback after I took Jordan Love, so I thought let's just start off with those 2 productive QBs. I mean, last year they were QB 5 and 6. Not necessarily expecting them to repeat that, but I'm also not having to draft them at QBs 5.
Yeah,
I think there's enough touchdown production with both.
Well, we had Ryan Heath on the show, and we were talking about some advanced analytics, and Brock Purdy was 2nd in fantasy points per dropback in the NFL last season, and he's got a ton of upside, and he's such a value. I mean, like, you look at him, he's what, 5'6", QB 11, and he definitely has the upside to move into that top 6. So that's pretty good value. Now I'm hoping to get my 2nd tight end. I don't think I'm going to, but I've never wanted to roster this guy, but I think this year I'm starting to turn a little bit, and I really want him on a lot of rosters. I want a lot of shares of this guy.
Is that Jake Ferguson?
Nope. And I got sniped by Wendy in our last draft, and he is there, so I will take him. Some of the points per game stuff that George Kittle brings to the table, it's like when I use what you could call it the eye test. I look at George Kittle and his overall statistics, and a lot of it is kind of skewed towards the games that he misses and the games that he doesn't hit. But some of his points per game numbers and his advanced analytics, he is absolutely an elite top 4 tight end. And I'm just hoping that this is, a lot of times guys have a couple injuries over the course of a few years, and I'm really hoping that this is the season that George Kittle stays on the field for 17 games. And in a format like SFB14, I'm willing to take that chance this early. So, and Mike goes with Trevor Lawrence. He's definitely a favorite of the Dynasty Pulse and Fantasy Forecast. All 3 of us are really, really high on Trev this year. That's due a large part to Schultze and some of the deep diving that he's done as a Jaguars fan into Trevor Lawrence, and opened our eyes a little bit to the potential, the upside that's still there, that has never gone away. He hasn't been able to fully put it together to the point where he's like QB1, but his upside has never gone away.
All right. There's some fades here that have kind of dropped in my lap, and it's hard not to pick a faller that's fallen so drastically. And I'm not really big on a heavy wide receiver build, honestly, in this. I see there's so much value later on. This is a tough one. I'm going to go with
there it is. Okay, so now I've put myself in a little bit of a pickle. I'm in an oak barrel full of salt and cucumbers, and all of the running backs that I want in the top 5 rounds have been taken, and that's probably a situation, if I'm targeting tight ends, that I'm going to be in. So looking at the running backs that are available right now, I really don't like any of them as much as a lot of the wide receivers that are there. So I'm going to pivot back to a wide receiver build, even though I would prefer to hang on for another 4 or 5 rounds before I start taking wide receivers. But the running backs are just scooped up at this point. And so now I'm going to start targeting these wide receivers. And hopefully other people are taking guys like Kirk Cousins and leaving these guys to me. So I'm going to start with Nico. because he's been good to me.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, the way Nico and Puka were both winning last year, it seems like it's repeatable. They're both tied to pretty good quarterbacks. I mean, Nico in the long term, Puka in the at least short term now. Stafford could still play for a few more years. So,
And Puka came out of nowhere, but Nico, some of us saw coming.
For sure. Yeah, I was touting Nico Collins last year as well. Not to think he'd finish top 12, but the spots I did have him in, it was nice to have that. Have that.
Well, even if you bought into guys like Nico or Puka, you were getting them relatively cheap. Even if you reached for them a round or two, it paid off like insanely amounts. And these are the guys you need to have as difference makers. You peg a Puka, you peg a Nico, you peg a Kyron Williams, and you get two of those guys on your roster, you're automatically a contender. And that's what you got to do this year and every year is find those guys that are those ADP difference makers. And Puka Nacua, Nico Collins definitely were them last year. That's for sure.
And I'm going to get into it once Kyle picks because I don't want to do any table talk before he gets a chance. But I'm going to reveal after the turn my this year's Nico, my this year's Puka, and my this year's Amon-Ra St. Brown. So hopefully they all are available for me.
Well, I was considering one of the two 49ers receivers there. It would have been a nice stack with Purdy as well. Debo was probably going to be the pick.
Back to back.
I think that's fine, though, because I really like this wide receiver. I think he's going to have a bounce back. We talked about Puka. I mean, Cooper Kupp's just as amazing. I think the two of them are both going to monopolize most of the targets, over 50%, I would imagine.
Yes.
Combined, and probably over 50% of the touchdowns as well. So I think, they could finish pretty similarly, and to get Kupp like 3.5 rounds after Puka, I think is really good value. And just because I don't want to dive much further than this on the first tight end, I'm going to take Jake Ferguson. According to ADP, it's not a reach. It feels like it's a reach, and I'm taking him because I'd rather get ahead of the potential run at tight end. So I don't know. Maybe I made a mistake there. Would have loved to go double receiver though. So thanks.
No, I love Jake Ferguson.
Auto draft for sniping Debo.
I love Jake Ferguson, and in my ideal build, I'm taking him in the 4th.
And that's your ideal build where you're already going with Dak and CD, right? You want to go the
correct
stack, yeah, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
and there's got to be somebody getting those secondary targets there, and Ferguson, is prime for that position. Yeah, there's rumblings that Brandon Cooks could have another year where he's relevant, but I think that they're going to get funneled to Jake Ferguson, and he's going to have a really large year, in my opinion. So I think that's a value there. He's inside my top 10. He's ahead of guys like TJ Hawkinson this year. He's ahead of quite a few tight ends, honestly. And I just like him a lot. I got him ahead of Njoku. I got him ahead of, some of these other guys that went ahead. I got him ahead of Kittle because I think Kittle's lost a lot of weight this offseason. And I'm not sure, that's going to play well into, him being able to stay on the field as long. He's shown in the past his stability and stuff like that. He's missed a lot of games throughout his career, and losing that type of weight, it concerns me.
So I just took my this year's Nico Collins, George Pickens, and I'm going to
pair with Nico Collins. So that's very on point.
And I'm going to wait until Greinberg picks before I take my this year's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Hopefully he lasts. But I misspoke. I just didn't see him on the draft board when I said there weren't any running backs that I liked. Alvin Kamara, I really, really like.
That was the one guy I was maybe thinking of taking instead of Ferguson and letting tight end risk it. Looking at ADP, I thought it was going to be tough, but there might have been a chance he fell. Whereas Ferguson's ADP on Scott Fishbowl, or again on the Scott Fishbowl ADP on going for 2 is 52nd overall. So that's in the 5th round. Whereas Kamara's down at 70th overall. The 71st player, but yeah.
Just took my this year's Amon-Ra St. Brown.
It's like you knew it. Oh, that's a great pick. Yeah, I love Zay Flowers.
So he's not lasting to me.
And Amon-Ra scores more than Nico Collins, right? So it's actually Flowers is a better pick than Pickens. Is that what the argument is? Because I'd rather as good as Nico Collins as I'd rather have Amon-Ra.
Yes, and I'm just merely talking about style, like
Sure, yeah, okay,
kind of prototype frame, picture frame, like the type of, like, he's going to be a smaller guy, target guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Nico Collins, George Pickens is going to be this year's Nico Collins as a third-year breakout that finally like reaches the potential that we all think that he can. And my Puka is I'll go ahead and take him now so I can, for the content. Even though he's kind of down there.
So I just went over my rankings this morning, and I went over all my dynasty rankings, and then I went over all my redraft rankings, and then I kept moving George Pickens up my board, and I have him as a top 12 wide receiver right now in 2024. I just see a path for him, and that's coming from big words, Biggs, from a year ago, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Coming from me, and I'm just super high on him as well. I love Ladd McConkey too there, Biggs. I love your build so far. I think Ladd McConkey is another guy I'm going to be targeting in this type of round here. I love his upside. I think, he's got the opportunity right away to come in there and gain quite a substantial target share. I wouldn't be surprised if he is second in targets out of this rookie class, only behind Malik Neighbors. Because of the opportunity share there. And you never know, like the Chargers could surprise some people this year. But Ladd McConkey is going to be definitely a direct beneficiary of Justin Herbert's passes this year. So
I do want to say I missed it because I wasn't looking at all the people on the board, but shout out to Shia LaBeouf. He is an absolute mock draft monster, and one of my commissioners. So shout out Shia. All right, what are you thinking here, Kyle?
Well, yeah. So I've got one guy in the queue that I'm definitely going to take. I'm just to save myself some time on this, or to add some time for the second pick. I'll wait a little bit. And then I've got actually a good add-on to your whole Nico Collins to George Pickens comparison. Yeah, I think we'll do that. Yeah. All right, so we're going to go Jaden Reed to start. Gets the stack with Jordan Love. Again, I get to showcase my Packers bias. And then James Conner. And I think with Reed, it's even though I think he's a safe target floor being a slot receiver on an offense that typically will feature the slot receiver the most, I think he's also got good touchdown upside, A, through the air with Jordan Love, but B, also rushing touchdown upside.
Yeah.
So he might get some carries. So in the Scott Fishbowl format with the points per carries. And Reed has returned kicks at times. Not often. Specifically like when Keyshawn Nixon's injured or out, because I think he's kind of earned the role of being their primary returner. But they're with the new kickoff rules, is there a chance that Reed gets one or two opportunities there as well? So then for James Conner, just going with the volume. As much as I do think Trey Benson is good and a long-term good investment in Dynasty, I still think this is Connor's team to get the majority of the touches, majority of the carries, and some good touchdown upside, which is always whoever Kyler Murray's main running back is always has good touchdown upside because he can always lead a good offense. And the defense is always having to account for Kyler so much that it actually makes it for easier running lanes for whoever the lead running back is. So Connor's proven it over the years, but like Kenyon Drake had career years with Arizona, and it was a lot of times just getting those touchdown opportunities.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I really like Trey Benson.
Yeah, no, exactly. Gave him a good long-term investment.
Yeah, I really like Trey Benson. I honestly think he could probably just take over that backfield within a game or two.
Can we get a little scroll on that draft board, Mike?
Yeah, sorry, but
no worries.
Kyle Pitts is getting in the way. Or no, it's Bijan. Never mind. Okay,
my overlay. I won't say
anything bad about Bijan. But to the one comment I wanted to make about like Pickens being this year's Nico Collins, the one thing that those two have in common that led to these breakouts was quarterback play. Like Davis Mills was all right, but clearly CJ Stroud came in and was a whole different level and allowed Nico Collins to hit that top 12 upside. George Pickens has had Kenny Pickett the last couple of years. And yes, Russell Wilson hasn't been spectacular the last couple seasons, but even the bad version of Russ we saw 2 years ago, because he did make improvements last year under Sean Payton. But if you go to that first year in Denver, that's still leaps and bounds ahead of where Kenny Pickett is. So even if and Fields is clearly much better than Kenny Pickett. So even if there's a quarterback switch, George Pickens is going to have much better quality quarterback play this year, which can lead to this breakout.
And we've talked about it on all of our shows, where last season Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph combined for 100 more throws than Russ Wilson, and or 200 more throws than Russell Wilson, but an equal number of catchable targets. So the difference was vast. So I absolutely love George Pickens this year, especially with target monster Deontay Johnson out of the building.
Now, just for one clarification, because I'm considering a third quarterback, but because there's no bench spots, I'm guessing we can't actually take a third quarterback, right?
You can take anybody that you want. Mike doesn't like doing the 22-round mocks.
Okay. All right. That's fair. I mean, who does?
I do. Because I like knowing what I'm looking for on the back end, and I don't get them a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point. You got to put in the work, right? If you want the results, you got to put in work. We're just lazy. We want to cut right to it.
Yeah, because there's guys that I'm targeting late in the later rounds, like Raiders rookie Dylan Laube, Will Shipley. There's a bunch of running back handcuffs. There's a bunch of wide receivers with possible kick return upside, like Xavier Gibson, and they're just not going to be taken in the first 15, 16 rounds. And I don't know. I don't have a gauge on where they're going to be if we're not seeing them in mock drafts. So with that, are you going to take a third quarterback? Or are you going to still be looking at what your realistic build would be?
Well, in my realistic build, this is probably the range where I'd want a third quarterback.
Okay.
I know last year I went, again, Mahomes early, and then I think I took Kirk Cousins at the 3-4 turn. And that was good for a while, but then CJ Stroud just kept falling, and I ended up taking him in I think it was right around here, the 8th, 9th round. So that seemed to work, especially when Cousins got hurt. Then I had CJ Stroud, and that's when he was really smashing. So I had pretty good quality quarterback play as a result of having the third QB. Feel like you have to chase it if you don't get it. So I'm going to go with Geno Smith here. Made sure the bye weeks didn't line up, because I was thinking Deshaun Watson, but his week 9 bye is the same as Brock Purdy. So if I was truly building this team, I'd probably want to avoid that. Give some stackable games between Geno and Brock Purdy. If those are maybe bad matchups for Love, do I go with both of those players? Although sometimes Seahawks 49ers games are super low scoring. But either way, that's probably how I would go build. And I think I'm the first to get a third QB. And I've done that before in Scott Fishbowl. Be really aggressive on the quarterbacks and then not have to worry about it. I could spend all my fab money on the other positions and not be forced. Because I've done that too, where I've gone 2 quarterbacks or a third one late, and I feel like I forced to just, the first sign of anyone else starting a quarterback, I just jump on them to put all my fab towards them. So I'd rather have too many quarterbacks than not enough. And especially in a format where you can't trade, I'm okay with that, because to me, it's all about A, playing defense. Someone else might be able to use Geno Smith really well, and now they can't. And B, if I ever need another quarterback, I know I can't acquire it via trade. I'd rather have the insurance. So I'm fine using up one bench spot on a third quarterback, even if I don't start them.
Playing defense is important. Last year's Fishbowl, I had Lamar, Jared Goff, and Sam Howell. So for at least the first 14 weeks, I had three pretty good quarterbacks. And then Sam Howell fell off a cliff, and Jared Goff had a bad game for me in the playoffs when Lamar was out on a bye, and it all went south. But
what happened to me is when Stroud got hurt. It was right when those playoffs happened, because I think I made it through about 1 or 2 weeks of the playoffs. But then, no Stroud. So suddenly my last week alive, I had to go with just one quarterback. And I had to hope Mahomes carried me, and sure enough, he didn't. So I had much more success the previous year, where I got to the second last round, technically the semifinals. So trying to chase that feeling again and get back there.
Yeah, and third quarterbacks are a lot more important than we give them credit for. I think a lot of that has to do with best ball. you need to be able to have 3 elite quarterbacks. We talk about the bullied tight end and having 3 top 10 tight ends, or even in the yin and yang. In yin and yang tight end, shout out Andrew Cooper, who will be on the show next week. You want to take a top 5 tight end and then have somebody with 90 reception or 90 target or 10 touchdown upside. In the Scott Fish Bowl, with the tight end scoring the way that it is, I think you want 3 tight ends who are all 2 of them in the top 5, and then 1 at least that's going to be that 90-10 yin yang. And can we get another scroll? I'm sorry I made the
it's not it's as scroll as it's as far down as I can get it.
Okay, well, that's my fault. And
unfortunately,
Marvin Mims just went, but you can see that, and then I'll report on the picks as they go.
So we basically have 1 round left here. So
sure.
Mm.
Final
picks, guys. You make them count.
I love Marvin
I guess
Mims
you still have 2 picks
with his receiving up, or his return upside. Tony Pollard goes. Daniel Jones goes. Daniel Jones is a very, very, like, he's a huge sleeper this year. I've been taking him and the Malik Neighbors stack in best ball quite a bit. Christian Watson goes.
And to wait that long, to get your second QB and to feel okay about it, that's a pretty good build at the rest of your positions.
Yeah. Taysom Hill, Will Levis, Kyle's guy, Christian Watson.
I was thinking if he fell, I'd do the double stack with Reed and Watson, but yeah.
What do you think about his symmetry?
I mean, apparently it's better, so that's great. If anything, I'm more upset that a professional football team who's has athletic people, like people who are in charge of like players' health and players' bodies, how it took them 2 years and they didn't find it. Now, kudos to them for outsourcing, realizing that okay, we don't know how to solve this problem. Let's let someone else solve it. But it seems like a simple thing. Oh, just that you're not running equally on both legs. It's like slightly stronger. Like that's.
Yep.
The Packers couldn't figure that out, but I mean, it seems like it's solved. So now, if he has no more hamstring issues, that's great. That doesn't preclude him from having ankle or knee issues. So that could still be a thing that any football player faces as a risk. But I'm willing to kind of go into the season and not dock him for the injuries. I mean, and that's typically how I go about it. If a player had been injured the last couple of years, but he's entering training camp healthy, there's no reports of anything, and he's starting the season healthy, I'll consider them healthy until they show me otherwise.
Right.
So the more the players that we know are recovering from massive injuries, or they get themselves injured in training camp. Training camps haven't started yet, so there's still obviously risk for that. But so in my mind, I'll go and consider Watson at his projections, wherever you think he's going to finish. That's where I'll draft him and not dock him down the rankings for some perceived injury risk.
That was a pretty good draft so far, guys. I think some savvy owners in here. Not a lot of sliding of players. A lot of reaches for players that have been storming up ADPs at this stage. So excited to see how this plays out. And I'm in this 11 spot. I'm pretty happy with what I've come out with, just based off of where I've seen things happen. I'm really happy to see Trevor Lawrence slide to me there. As my first quarterback, I think that's a pretty strong guy to have as your anchor there. And Biggs, I really love where you came from. I love your smashing of that wide receiver going against the grain. Zamir White as your 0 RB. I mean, he could easily be a top 12 running back this year with the opportunity that he could have, right? So nice build from you, and double down at the quarterback position at the end there. We waited a little bit there, and then Kyle, I like the stacking that you did there. You're positioning yourself well for big games. So a lot of solid teams here, and a lot of them would have a chance that this would be a pretty competitive division in a Scott Fish Bowl. If I were to say so.
I almost went Hunter Henry, and instead I went Derek Carr.
Yeah. I like Hunter Henry too this year. I think that's a really solid play. Some of these later tight ends, there could see some value there. Guys in new positions, guys that are, kind of going under the radar, like your Hunter Henrys. And, as bad as this sounds, I don't mind what, seeing Mike Gesicki in Cincinnati and see what he could do there. Right. He's known to be a red zone threat. Yeah. even as a Chiefs fan, I really like Zamir this year. Yeah, we're non-biased as Chiefs fans. We don't hold grudges, right? I mean, we're good sports for the most part.
What are you going to hold grudges about? You're the team that has back-to-back Super Bowls. You don't have to hold a grudge against anyone.
So I have a couple things. First of all, drop the mic FF. Shoot me a DM at bigboneded FFB on Twitter, BIGBONEDED FFB. Let's get you on the show as a Chiefs fan. And maybe we can do an uncovered roundtable, Chiefs and Raiders face off. Over on the Undroppables. As well.
I would also. Can I interrupt? I would also love him have him on my Uncovered show, the Chiefs Uncovered. So we'll reach out for that as well. So go on, Big. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. So I am on the clock right now in a keeper league. We get to keep 6, and somehow I missed that. I missed the keeper deadline. So my keepers carried over, I think, from last year, and I had drafted Kyler Murray in our draft last year, and kept Jerry Jeudy, and then Jerry Jeudy disappointed, and now he's on the Browns, and I don't want him anymore, but he came out as a keeper, but I lost Kyler Murray because I didn't tab him. So I need some help. I'm looking at, this is my first pick in our draft. We got Travis Etienne on the board, Malik Neighbors, Justin Herbert, Jalen Waddle, and I'm looking at Kyler Murray and Brock Purdy. And I'm trying to decide. It's a 2-quarterback league. I have Trevor Lawrence as it is, and I need that second quarterback, and I probably should take him now, even though I'm giving up like Trey McBride is there. There's some really good picks on the board. My tight end is TJ Hawkinson, and I love him for the second half, not for the first half. So let's make a pick together. Am I taking Kyler? Am I taking Trey McBride? Or am I taking Brock Purdy?
For me, they're bigs. I see. You said you had Trevor Lawrence. I think that's a very safe floor quarterback, and I don't think you need to be pairing Brock Purdy with that. I would be going for the upside quarterback play, somebody that has that rushing upside, someone that can score a lot of points. And be that difference maker because you have that floor as that quarterback. As much as Trey McBride would make that team look really good, I think quarterback reigns supreme in 2 quarterback leagues. And if you can get a guy that could potentially finish as a top 5 quarterback with his rushing upside, I'd be all over that. That would be my advice on that situation. Malik Neighbors is also a guy that I'd be, salivating over. But based off of what you're saying, I'd be going quarterback. What about you there, Kyle? How would you go about that situation?
Yeah, McBride's great, but yeah, I think because you already have Hawkinson, I think the way you want to approach this draft now is you're looking for someone that you think can fit in early in the year, but you also don't want to necessarily spend too much on that tight end. So you're going to probably wait later in the draft, take a tight end you think will get targets early, but then also be really quick to cut them if they're not, and pick up another tight end while you're waiting for Hawkinson to either get on the field, or even once he returns, he might not be producing right away. So I think your second tight end spot on your roster, I think, is going to be very fluid. And I mean, yeah, if you get McBride, that sets you up. But then what happens later in the season? I mean, maybe that's a good trade chip to have. But I think 2 QB especially, I would strongly consider either Murray or Purdy. I mean, you said Justin Herbert's still there. I'd go all 3 of those over McBride. So if the emotional side of Murray makes a lot of sense, that you missed out on him as a keeper, but you still get to draft him here, that makes you feel good. And honestly, the upside probably does make sense, that Murray is like just points wise makes the most sense as well. And if ever McBride falls, then you're starting to set up that stack. Probably not going to fall, but if I think I would go Kyler Murray. Not to say Purdy doesn't have upside, because of the amount of touchdowns he throws. He can also get some upside, even if we don't view him as an upside quarterback. So I think both are good compliments to Lawrence, and they would truly be the QB1 on your team. Lawrence is QB2 for you. So
say if Lawrence wasn't your quarterback and it was more of a rushing guy like Lamar Jackson, I'd be going Purdy in the other situation. I'd rather have more of a floor guy to complement the rushing upside. So you always have that safety net where heaven forbid 2 guys get, put out because the rushing is going to put him in harm's way. That's how I would be approaching it. But yeah, I mean, Purdy or Kyler are awesome picks.
Because we saw with Lawrence last year, he'll just play through anything. Doesn't matter what type of injuries. He'll play even if he shouldn't be. So my instinct was Kyler Murray as well.
Real quick before we get back to my super important draft. Boofy says, is this the year to wait on quarterback and draft Bryce Young and Russell Wilson? And I absolutely say yes. If you saw in our mock draft, I waited until very, very late to take Bryce Young. And then I took Derek Carr because my eyes were on him. But if I really sat down and thought about it and created a draft board for this one, I would have taken Russell Wilson instead. And he points out that you could draft like 7 RBs and wide receivers before those 2 quarterbacks. And that's totally true. So now back to this ever important draft. Let's just hash this out. I have a 12-hour clock. So let's go ahead and fill the time. I'm just kidding. What I hadn't gotten to is that I have another pick 4 picks later, and McBride, Kincaid, and Andrews should all be there. So then again, do I want to? I can take a chance on Jaden Daniels later. Okay, so I'm going to go with Kyler Murray.
Yeah, there's other tight ends there too. Again, like McBride makes sense as a stack, but especially because it's keeper and you really are viewing it as 1 year only. Mark Andrews probably makes the most sense. Especially like he should be healthy to start the season while you're waiting for Hawkinson. The name you said was Travis Etienne. If he ever falls, though, like who do you have currently as your RB1?
My running backs look like Rashad White. That's it.
I'd go. I think if Etienne's there, that would be the pick I would make
over a tight end. I
think so.
I probably agree with you.
I mean, is there a significant tight end premium?
I don't know if there's one at all. But I do need a starter for the first half of the year to supplement Hawkinson. But
I also think, I guess you can. I mean, as we've seen, like a 0 RB approach, there could be some starting running backs late. But I think you can get early season production from tight end late if you're playing the matchups right. And again, you're willing to use that tight end spot, that bench spot on a tight end, and be really flexible with it, and not be afraid to change out and go after tight ends on a week-to-week basis as opposed to a season-long basis.
There are no tight end premiums, however, and I wish that I had. There is a rushing first down, 40-plus rushing yard touchdown bonus, 50-yard rushing touchdown bonus, and that's Travis Etienne's wheelhouse. Is those breakaways?
Yeah, but that also helps Kyler. So I think that makes the Kyler picks make more sense as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm feel good about. Okay, Boofy. I guess you're not.
Is he asking about the draft?
Yeah. I did answer.
I guess we didn't really answer though. Wilson and Young. I mean, like if you believe in those guys, and I think with Wilson, I think there is an argument to make that he could just start the whole season and not get benched. And if you are leaning that side, I think he's going super late based on like what his production could be. Especially if you believe in the Pickens breakout, you think that's also going to help Russell Wilson in that regard.
Yeah, I mean Russell Wilson's going to start. He's going to have
there goes Travis Etienne.
Yeah, there he goes. But yeah, Wilson and Bryce Young, I think, are very good late round guys that are gonna, show some promise, especially if you could draft them, like you mentioned, seven running backs, 7 wide receivers ahead of them. I mean, I wouldn't feel safe in Scott Fishbowl if those were my 2 guys, my top 2 quarterbacks. But as your second and third, I love that. I think both of them can definitely return some value there.
I would actually feel comfortable if those were my first 2. That's kind of what I was aiming for, but I did take Anthony Richardson in the first round. There is a scenario in which, hey, take Justin Jefferson with the 107 and then wait until round 10, 11 to take Bryce Young, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr. Those are 3 guys that I would. Drake May is still there. He's got rushing upside as well. So there are a lot of options, especially if you and that's kind of the fun thing about the Scott Fishbowl is you can build any way that you want, and as long as your guys hit, you're going to be looking at some some production.
Yeah, especially with more flex spots, not as many designated starters. That's leaving so many different builds.
Yeah, that was good. I got to hit the road here right away there, Big Z. So if you guys want to continue on, go right ahead. But the camping trip's coming up close. I'm headed out to, 3 days in the wilderness. It's finally getting some decent weather up here in Canada. It's our summer now there, Kyle. What do you got planned on the summertime? Do you have big plans?
So there's a league I'm in that we draft every year. We go to someone's cottage and we'll draft there. Usually it's early. I think it's August 10th this year. So that cottage is in McDougall, which is near Parry Sound. So sort of on the east side of Lake Huron.
I was going to ask you if you were going to the Fantasy Football Expo, but you're obviously not if you're doing that draft in on that same weekend.
Yeah, for sure. So I won't be available. I think that's 2 years in a row now where it's fallen, where that our draft happens to be during the Expo draft. So
it's next year's the time to push it. Be like, hey, you guys, we can't have it with the Expo. I did. I can wrap it up as whenever Kyle needs to leave. But I did want to tell you a story about a young man who I was very, very high on as far as his career prospects in the NFL, and that he was at my University of California, Berkeley. He was a Golden Bear wide receiver, and he was a very, very tall but a little bit slight touchdown machine, just such an incredible end zone target. And I thought he was going to have a huge career in the NFL. And he gets drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. And I'm like, here we go. It's Kenny Lawler time. And something happened on the way to superstardom. He didn't until he got to the CFL. And so my CFL attention increased as soon as Lawler got there. And so this year I hadn't heard anything, and I was looking around at some Blue Bombers box scores and I didn't see Lawler, and I was like, what's happening? And that's when you advised me he broke his arm or something.
I think he has a wrist fracture. So the first quarter of the first week, it was like I think it was like his second or third target of the game, and they were like, it was like the second drive of the game. So almost immediately they showed they were going to use him a lot, and then I think he was trying to go for a first down, brace himself out of bounds. I think just the way he landed on his wrist caused a fracture. So he will return at some point this season, unlike other Bombers receiver Dalton Schoen, who I don't think they've confirmed it officially, but it seems like non-contact knee injury can mean so many different things. But like, are we thinking he tore his ACL? Is that what the fear is right now?
That is the fear up in Winnipeg here, and they like to keep things tightly closed. Mike O'Shea is not one to he'll play his players till the bone. I mean, as you've seen with Adam Bigkill in the Grey Cup, only to our detriment sometimes. He likes to use his veterans, and I don't see him playing again this year, and that's really a huge hit for our Bombers. They're already 0-4, and it's not looking good for a team that's been in 4 straight Grey Cup appearances, and not looking good.
They really need that Lawler return.
Yeah,
where's your Bombers football there, Mike?
I got one right here.
There it is. Okay.
I got one here, and then I got another one right here. This one was signed by the 2019 Grey Cup championship team. So this is the one that the one that we waited 30 years to get. That drought was quite the scene in our from a season ticket holder for 20 plus years. My family's been, diehard Winnipeg Blue Bomber fans, and we went through the worst, the worst years, and then we had a couple really good years here, and now we're kind of back to normal, back to reality with our veterans coming in, and they're not so young anymore, and the age cliff happens in the CFL just like it happens in the NFL, and that's kind of what I'm seeing happen with my beloved Bombers right now.
It did seem like they brought it all back. Let's sigh everyone. Let's go for it. One more. We've already been to. Let's go to 5 straight Grey Cups. Seems like they really pushed it.
I was kind of telling that Lawler story. It was kind of a half-hearted dig at Mike, because I talk to Mike 3 or 4 times a week at least, and he knows my love for California Golden Bear legend Kenny Lawler, and he didn't even tell me.
Well, it's funny. I think Mike is being influenced by Mike O'Shea because, to your point, and this isn't my joke. I heard it on a podcast. I think it's Josh Smith on Podski Wee Wee. But
Yeah.
if we didn't have to tell fans like what the day of the game was and where it was being held, so they'd show up and the attendance money would come in. Mike O'Shea wouldn't even like want to release that information. Just like if we could just play the game without anyone watching, like that's how little information we want to give away. We want people to watch the game though. So
that is a huge Mike O'Shea joke.
All right, yeah, classic Mike O'Shea joke. But it's
resonated
with Kenny Lawler. Like when he was having his breakout in the CFL, it's like, okay, became really known to me. And then I look back into my previous drafts, and I actually did draft him in a rookie draft whenever he came out as a fourth rounder. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I knew something with Lawler even back then. Not that he produced in the NFL, but
yeah, I mean, when he was at Cal, he was a red zone monster. Like if you got him into the end zone, he was going to high point over everybody. Just long, big body. He knew how to use his body. He had long arms. He could get that separation even with a guy in his pocket. And I don't know what happened because like he was the prototype. Maybe it was the fact that he was only 170 pounds at 6'3", 6'4", whatever he is. But I had huge hopes for him. And, I mean, he became a CFL star. So what are you going to do?
Man, he had so many good like highlight reel catches last year. Is like you could have just a highlight reel on Lawler 2023 catches, alone over the previous seasons. It was
he was always just a contested catch monger. Like I could do it, and in such a huge field like the CFL has, it just highlighted even more with some more range. He could get that separation, and he's really cool to watch on the big field that the CFL is. But
CFL fantasy last year, I played him so often because he was. Coming off Dalton Schoen's 2022 season, where as a rookie he led the league in receiving yards, he was always so highly priced. And Lawler, coming out last year, that coming back from Winnipeg or coming back from Edmonton, starting with the suspension, he was always priced lower than he should have been through the season. He slowly started to creep up at the end of the year, but for most of the year, I was just lock Lawler in the lineup every week.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever heard of CFL fantasy. Mike, come on, what do you?
So it is DFS style. Like I know, DraftKings has had CFL DFS for years. I used to actually, on Going for Two, I used to write articles about it back before Ontario changed their laws, and now I can't get on DraftKings anymore. But thanks Ontario, thanks Doug Ford. So I was big into playing CFL DFS on DraftKings. Now there's a Genius Sports, which is an official partner of the CFL. They've created a platform for it. It's not for any money though, so it's like it's got to be done as a free contest, but still it's the DFS style where each player has prices and you've got a weekly budget to fill in.
So I'm not familiar, but maybe it would help some of our Canadian followers. Can you use a VPN for some of the DFS stuff?
I'm sure you could. I'm sure that there's ways to.
You're just not that much of a degen that.
No. I didn't need it that much, so
need it in my veins.
Yeah, there's a small niche for this type of content, and there's some diehard CFL fans, and there's a bunch in each city, and if you've ever been to a CFL game, they're welcoming. It's such a really cool atmosphere. There's some very heated rivalries. There's only 9 teams in our league, so we're the end of a lot of jokes, but there's no other league that has been around for as long as the CFL, and there's a reason behind it. It's because of the fans, the people that support it, and it's never the best game in the world, but they're very entertaining. And I'll tell you what, every year there's a huge population of our Canadians that definitely take that game very seriously, and we come together as a nation for that, no matter who plays in that game. So,
as a lover of football, it kind of reminds me of the NFL phenomenon in England. Like, I know some things about the CFL. I can name some teams. I know about the Grey Cup. It's fun to watch the pre-snap motion of the receivers and stuff. I know that the field is long. Like, I mean, it's a cool game. They don't push it the same way the NFL is like trying to get into Germany and England and things like that. It would be nice for CFL to kind of like push it a little bit further into the United States. And
well, for a long time there, for a couple of years there, we did go into the United States. They had about 5 teams in the United States. Las Vegas had a team, Birmingham had a team. Baltimore had a team.
And that was before the Ravens had brought NFL football back to Baltimore.
Yeah.
So there was,
and
it worked for a couple of years because there was that appetite for it. But then as soon as the Ravens came to town, then the Stallions they trampled off.
And they became the Montreal Alouettes again, and became a huge dynasty in the 90s when they came back from the United States. It was crazy. Yeah, there was about 5 or 6 teams, I'd say, in the United States. Birmingham Barracudas, the Baltimore Stallions, Las Vegas Posse. That's where Anthony Calvillo started out, and interesting to have that flashback.
The Sacramento Gold Miners. That's why I know about it, because they were my team in 1993, 4, 5.
Yeah, see, like a 3-year span in the 90s. I figured, it was. That's exactly blast from the past.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys, I got to get to my camping trip. I'm gonna peace out. Kyle, appreciate having you on the show. You guys can continue on if you want, but I'm gonna reach out to you after this weekend to talk about that Uncovered series that we're gonna have to talk a little bit more about. It, right, my man?
Certainly, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And I'm going to wrap it up too. I'm going to shout out Shia LaBeouf. He is in the chat at this point. Let me look over his draft real quick, because there have been mocks that we've done where I gave him the MVP of the mock, which is, it's one of those things where I laugh at people who say that they won the mock draft. But at the end of the show, we like to look at the drafts and see who might have been the draft winner, just for the laughs. And CJ Stroud, Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, Mike Evans, that's a pretty good start. Pacheco, Tank Dell, upside there. Aaron Rodgers, he needs to get into some symmetry. TJ Hawkinson, Mostert, Watson, and Taysom. That's a pretty good team. Shia LaBeouf, not the real Shia LaBeouf, but maybe next time you'll get the MVP. And Shia, not the real Shia, watch out for some of my updates, because I'm going to be drafting just about every day over the next, not Saturday, Sunday, but every day tomorrow, and then all next week, getting ready for my July 13th draft. So shout out at Shia LaBeouf, not the real Shia LaBeouf.
If I could give an MVP, I think I would lean towards Wildcats 192. And you talked about the ideal start, the Lamb Dak. I think I would say their first 6 picks were almost ideal. You get the Prescott Lamb stack, you get the Tua Waddle stack. Alvin Kamara is your RB1, great value. Again, I should have taken him instead of Ferguson, I feel like. But then I think the back half of what we did as the mock, maybe could have used an extra running back. That's a lot of wide receivers. Might not be able to play all of them, but that would be something where if the mock kept going, I'd imagine they'd then focus, like almost avoid wide receiver the rest of the way. You probably don't need another one. Just adding a wide receiver is almost redundant at this point. From there, if you just filled out with depth at running back and a couple extra tight ends and your third quarterback, that would look like a really solid team. That would be, I think, for a team that didn't start QB in the first round, I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I like his start. I might have gone Goff over Tua. I might have gone Trevor with the.
I think I would have gone Herbert over Tua, actually, looking at the way the board fell.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm not huge on Ridley, Addison, or Brian Thomas. I do think Zach Moss has a potential. Zach Moss is one of my biggest targets in best ball, just because he's such like a boomer bust guy. He's a spike week guy, and he's got Chase Brown behind him. But in best ball, if you can get 25, 30-point games out of Zach Moss, which he's done before, if he can stay on the field, he reminds me a lot of Rashad Penny and early Raheem Mostert, where you look at him and you're like, if that guy could play 17 games, he'd be RB1.
And I mean, he was he was RB1 overall a couple weeks last year. It should be an even better offense. So Moss definitely makes sense.
Absolutely.
I am higher on Addison than consensus. I think that's part of my hedge against Hawkinson. Like what kind of struggles he's going to have this season. I feel like the path, even with whoever the quarterback is, if it's Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy, the path is open for Addison and Jefferson to just get a ton of targets and account for most of the touchdowns there. So
yeah, and I've talked
been
a
buying
lot
Addison
about
in Dynasty as well, so I think he's a good solid guy to go get.
if we look back to last year and Baker Mayfield with Canales, now we get Sam Darnold with Kevin O'Connell. That might be an absolute match made in heaven. A guy who's been around the league, he's been in multiple different offenses. He's getting another chance, but after he's put some things together, they see enough of him in camp to think this could be a fungible thing. JJ McCarthy, I love his upside. The fact that he was so young coming out in the draft, which is a really, really big time profile indicator of success in the NFL as draft age, especially now with all of these 26-year-old 6-year seniors coming out because of COVID. But Sam Darnold, sleepy breakout possible. So this is kind of what I've been looking at. CD to start, Dak for the stack, then Ingram and Ferguson, Trevor Lawrence. So now I have the Jaguars stack and the Cowboys stack. Zamir White, Pickens, Christian Kirk, Deontay Johnson, Cole Kmet, Jalen Warren, Russ, and then Rashid Shaheed. So that's the start that I've kind of like looked at as if I can kind of put this together, some semblance of it. I'm getting a few stacks, which I'm not an advocate of stacks outside of best ball, but in this kind of format, especially when you get to the playoffs, it's more of a best ball situation. So in a dynasty startup, people talk about stacks, not relevant. And then
there are certain stacks you could do to make less relevant players relevant, but it'll never be in you're not going to set those up in the first like 6 rounds. Like you'll have whatever your quarterback is. If I'm fading tight end and I want to take a few scatter shots at tight ends, make sure I'm stacking. I'm drafting
Right.
tight ends late that stack with the quarterback. Or I've heard of some people like Tommy Blair from Superflex Super Show and the Dynasty Junkies. I'm going to roster 3 wide receivers total. If that's all we have to start, I'll draft 2 elite ones early, and then my third guy I'll just be rotating in and out with the waiver wire.
Yeah.
In that instance, if you're going to go like super light at wide receiver, that third guy or that fourth guy that you don't really care about, aim for a stack with the quarterback, because that'll, especially if you are going so light and you're like, I don't even really care what the production is, you're just going to play them every week. You may as well maximize all those weeks where you're playing your quarterback. So those are like 2 instances I can think of where the stack makes sense. It's if you're fading tight end or the last starting wide receiver in your lineup. But outside of those 2, you're not really adding much.
What's really funny about what you just said is that I am a long-term advocate of streaming when it comes to the tight end position, the quarterback position, kickers, and defense in redraft. I've been playing fantasy football for a long, long time, but the idea of being a wide receiver streamer, and now that I'm thinking about it, a running back streamer and just playing matchups, I've never thought of that before. Not ever, not once. Just because it's always just been ingrained in me, the thing to do is to load up on wide receivers and running backs, and then you can play because you can play matchups and stream at the other positions, and you're not really falling off very much. But it seems like in wide receiver, that's not as sound a strategy. But now that I'm thinking about it, with the depth of wide receiver that's out there, things like Justin Jefferson getting hurt last year, that hey, everybody, we might have just uncovered a cool new strategy. Thanks, Kyle.
And I think for those who draft 0 RB, you're almost essentially doing that. Like, okay, I'm gonna even people who play hero RB, I'm gonna go one guy early. That second running back spot, I've got essentially 17 weeks of RB2 to fill in, and that's where I could just make sure you have a huge depth at the position and just be able to pick whichever guy pops up as the starter for that week.
Yeah. And make sure you're following David Zach for those matchups every week. All right. I really appreciate you coming on the show. We have an open invitation for you anytime you want to come on and talk. like I said, I'm going to be doing more mock drafts. We're going to be doing SFB14 mock drafts throughout the summer. We will have more directed analytical content as the SFB14 drafts finish up, and then a lot of preseason stuff, and then of course in season. And we'd love to have you on. We do have myriad shows. I've got my Raiders show. He's got his Chiefs show on the Undroppables. We have the Dynasty Pulse here on, well, it's actually simulcast now, Fantasy Football Plus Network, Undroppables. And then we have the Fantasy Forecast. It's our redraft show. We do 3 shows a week, and that's over at the Fantasy Football Advice Network. So you are welcome to come on anytime that you want. Just go ahead and reach out to me, and I'll be reaching out to you as well with, hey, are you available? But go ahead and tell everybody else where they can find your stuff, and a little bit of a closing message for everybody.
So you can find me on Twitter at Senra Says. I'll be tweeting out most of the stuff I do, which again are for 2 main websites, fullpresscoverage.com and goingfor2.com. So full press coverage. I will do some articles from time to time. It's a lot of podcasting though. I've got the Full Press Packers pod as well as the Full Press Fantasy pod. Fantasy pod goes year round. Dynasty typically in the first half of the calendar, and then the second half starting right around this time of year. We just kind of recorded our first redraft centric episode and really dive into the data. I've just finished doing projected target shares for all the receivers, tight ends, and running back rooms in general, not specific running backs, but I've also done touchdown projections, which that's something I've been doing the last couple seasons. I've been sharing those on the Full Press Fantasy Pod. So if anyone wants to subscribe now, the next 4 episodes are going to be just diving into these projections I have. So I think our next episode will be the AFC target share projections. And that's kind of a new project I've taken on this year doing that.
Well, damn. Now I have a question. So with touchdown projections, the fact that they're hard to predict, how are you? What are you looking at as far as like, is it a result of target share or a result of projected volume?
I actually do them independently. So like one's not feeding into the other. So I'm trying to look at both separately. But typically it's been past production in a few instances with touchdowns. This is a stat I got from Peter Howard. He kind of looked back since 2011. NFL players average 155 scrimmage yards for every touchdown. Now, obviously, some players are a lot better at scoring touchdowns than others, but I first look at that baseline based on their career yards per game they've played. How many touchdowns should these players have been expected to score?
Okay.
And then also looking at though how much have they actually scored? Again, some players are just better at scoring touchdowns than others, and so I want to account for that too. Yes, touchdown variance does exist, but again, we see guys that just repeatedly get these high touchdown seasons.
Right.
So I look at both those numbers and try and come up with an average, again, based on the yards they've produced, but also based on the total touchdowns they've produced, and kind of get at least a baseline expectation for every player.
Okay, and shout out, excuse me, friend of the show at PA Howdy. Love Peter Howard. His year by year breakouts at wide receiver and running back and quarterback fill my soul every year.
He's introduced me to some good metrics too, like the whole concept of per team attempt stats, receiving yards per team pass attempt, or just total yards per team total play. Like those types of stats, I've found a lot of usefulness in kind of looking at the game that way.
Yeah, he's a super cool guy. I had him on my interview show. We talked about history for a long time because he's a huge history guy. I love Peter. I gotta get back in touch with him. But now we have a show topic, and you're gonna come back on, and we're gonna have an entire show topic around touchdown projections. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. I hope, because it doesn't matter if you like it or not. That's what's gonna happen.
All right. Yeah, no, I love talking. Well, hey, and again, I'm going to be doing episodes on my podcast, so clearly it's a topic I want to talk about. I feel prepared to talk about. So yeah, I'd definitely love to come back, give the touchdown pulse for the dynasty landscape.
Well, let's go ahead and get you through those shows that you're doing first, and then once your stuff is out there in your platform, then come on our show and we'll talk about that.
And those episodes give me a good chance to talk to my co-host Brad Harvin and like get his input. Like, is there something I'm missing with a certain player, and like just get his feedback, especially for the target share one, because it's something that's totally new for me. I'm curious to get Brad's reactions and, of course, the listeners as well. But just the one last thing to shout out again is the Going for Two Live Network, which features a lot of different shows. So I co-host the 2-point conversion as well as press coverage, and in no particular order. So those will all happen. Typically, press coverage and 2-point conversion are Mondays, so they'll kind of alternate. I'll probably do at least one a month for each of those. In no particular order, it's like just these fun random mock drafts. Like our previous episode, we mock drafted board games, so that was super fun. Anyone can go check those out in the Going for Two Live archives on YouTube. There's also on Tuesday nights the Fantasy Cheat Sheet, which is hosted by guest in the comments for the show, Drop the Mic FF, Mike Hicks. He does a lot of great graphic stuff too for Going for Two. And again, the Going for Two Discord, there's tons of Scott Fishbowl mocks being done. There's been over 100 already this year. They just keep coming. So Jeff Lambert's able to produce our own ADP just based off our Scott Fishbowl mocks in the Discord.
Yeah,
So
I am a subscriber, and you all should be too. Thank you for coming on, Kyle. We will talk to you again at some point. Have you back on the show. Everybody else, I hope you win. Oh, and I don't have a producer, so I got to hit the button myself.